Welcome to Traveled, where we take a journey to a specific region so you discover what makes this part of the world so unique. Before we get rolling with our guest this week, I wanted to share the love with our Traveled sponsor. This podcast is powered by Swing Outdoors, the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and Yellowstone Teton Territory. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/Teton to connect with the great brands that make up this amazing region of the country. Let's do it. Let's jump in and find out where that road less traveled is going to lead us today. How you doing, Damon?
Doing great. Thanks for inviting us on.
Yeah, thanks for coming here today to talk about Henry's Lake and everything you have going around some of the conservation efforts. And I guess it's probably more than just that. I'm sure that, we've done a few episodes in that area now, and we've got a little bit of a background. I want to talk about, the importance of Henry's Lake and what you do as well. But first, take us into, how you got into your job. How did you get into this line of work where you're working for the foundation?
Great question. I was worked as a fisheries biologist on Henry's Lake for about 15 years. And I started in 2000. And at that time, when I first started, I made connection with the Henry's Lake Foundation. They were a NGO that was really contributing to habitat restoration improvement on the lake. And so that's where I made my first contact with the Henry's Lake Foundation, worked with them over a period up until 2018 when I retired. Then post-retirement, I stayed involved with the foundation and currently the vice president of the foundation.
Oh, gotcha. Wow. So you did, and what were when you were working there as a biologist on the lake, what were your, main, over the years, was your focus?
My primary focus was simply Henry's Lake. We had a dedicated employee for decades at Henry's Lake. Henry's Lake has been one of the top, most important fisheries in the state of Idaho. And so the Idaho Fish and Game dedicated an employee there full time. And so most all of my work focused on Henry's Lake, whether it be fisheries management aspect of it, the egg take program, the hatchery side of things, the habitat restoration, that side of things, and then cooperating with landowners. Without the landowners, we wouldn't be doing restoration on Henry's Lake.
Yeah, that's right. And what is the significance, maybe just give us a primer on that of Henry's Lake. We've talked, obviously the Henry's Fork, everything downstream. Why is Henry's Lake so important for that, that whole area, the whole basin?
Well, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the most important fisheries in the state, but it's at the top of the system and really feeds the entire Henry's Fork. And most people probably know that the Henry's Fork Foundation is very active down below Henry's Lake. We've always been dedicated. We've been around for over 40 years. A little bit of a contrast between the Henry's Lake Foundation and Henry's Fork Foundation. The Henry's Lake Foundation just focuses on Henry's Lake. So we do work on that. But yeah, significant. It's at the top of the system. It feeds everything below it, obviously. And so critically important. Yeah.
So, or what are some of the kind of the factors? Is water temperature? Is that something you're thinking about? Water levels? What are and it sounds like you're also got fish, populations that you're with a program there. But yeah, what are the major things that you're thinking about? Like you worked there for a number of years. Is it, or is temperature a major player here?
It is. Henry's Lake is a nutrient-rich, shallow lake. So an average depth of 16 feet, 15, 16 feet, really a maximum depth of about 23 feet, and really non-stratified for the most part during the summer. So there's the surface temperature and the bottom temperature is very close to the same. And given it's such a shallow lake, water temperatures are a concern. And so restoration of the tributaries to feed more cool water to the lake, protecting that or keeping that temperature low as it drains down to the lake is critically important. Water quality, I always said, being a nutrient-rich lake, fish grow very rapidly in Henry's Lake, and we have some, trophy-sized fish. It's always been considered a trophy fishery. And nutrient-rich, though, that also leads to problems in the winter. So high nutrient levels can contribute to potential for low dissolved oxygen in the winter. And so Henry's Lake, you could say, is somewhat prone to winter kill. So restoration and projects, and then also monitoring dissolved oxygen levels through the winter has been a critical component of fisheries management.
Right. So what do you do when you monitor dissolved oxygen? How do you, if you feel that the levels aren't quite right, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's that's a real challenge. In 1991, there was a large winter kill on the lake, and so after that, there was a aeration system put into the lake that has been in place for over 30 years. It's got really, in my opinion, it's got minimal benefits because it is, even though it's a large system, Henry Lake is a 6,400 surface acre lake, and once that dissolved oxygen drops below a critical level, it's hard to restore that oxygen level. And so, but by monitoring, and the Fish and Game monitors all winter now, you can at least kind of project what's going to happen, and then maybe do some change up on your egg take in the spring to maybe get more fish, hopefully for stocking in the fall.
Right, gotcha. And this is and so Henry's Lake is essentially the headwaters of the Henry's Fork.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you look at the map, you see Hebgen Lake, right? Which I'm not sure how far away that is. How far away is that if you're to drive over from Henry's?
Probably about 10 aerial miles, but over the Continental Divide.
Yeah, right. So it's pretty close, but over the divide. So you've got this, which is a very probably maybe as famous of a lake, right, as Henry's is Hebgen because of the Madison and all that. Are those pretty similar? Are the lakes what they have going, or I'm not even sure. I guess I'm thinking one is a little more natural. Or what? Do you know much about the Hebgen?
Yeah, a little bit. So Hebgen's in Montana, so we didn't work, being from Idaho. But yeah, Hebgen is a top fishery. I think Henry's has it probably is a much more fishing pressure and fishing hours. Hebgen, but yeah, two totally unique systems. Hebgen is a fairly deep lake. Hebgen, Henry's Lake fish grow real rapidly and don't live very long. So on Henry's Lake, you fish on 3 or maybe 4 years of age class fish, where Hebgen you have several more years of age class fish. They live longer, grow slower, not the trophy size. If you catch fish on Hebgen, you'll see more of the river shaped fish. They're not the fat deep fish like you see on Henry's Lake.
Right, because then those fish are able to migrate out I guess maybe talk about that with the Henry's Lake. So fish that are in Henry's, are they migrating? Are they able to get out of the lake downstream?
They can't get downstream. There's a dam in place, but they can go upstream in the major tributaries, and hence the restoration efforts over the past 40 years. So they are adfluvial fish. They spawn in the tributaries, live their most of their life out of the lake, and head up the tributaries to spawn in the spring. They're Yellowstone cutthroat primarily is the native fish. There are also hybrid trout in the lake, cutthroat rainbow hybrids, and then brook trout hybrids. The hybrids and the brook trout are both sterile. So those are managed in such a way that can control the numbers so they can't overcompete the Yellowstone cutthroat.
Right. Okay. And what are the major tribs? I'm trying to think, are there a few major tribs that they're spawning in upstream?
Yeah, absolutely. Targhee Creek would be the largest tributary, Howard Creek, Duck Creek, Hope Creek. We've done some work on Hope Creek, Timber Creek. Those are 5 of the big ones.
Timber. And what are some of the projects that are going on or that have gone on, some of the big ones that have helped for lake habitat restoration there for those Yellowstone cutties?
Yeah, the largest project that we've been involved with, and the Henry's Lake Foundation has been involved with pretty much every project over the last 40 years, but the largest project was a bridge replacement project. We had some culverts that were acting as a barrier on Highway 87, so we got involved and it actually initiated the project to replace those culverts with bridges on both Targhee Creek and Howard Creek. And that was a almost $2 million project. So that was our largest project. We're currently involved with one of our very large projects, restoration on Lower Targhee Creek with a new landowner there, Robert Key, with the Beartooth Group. He's well known for restoration throughout the West.
Okay. Wow. And this is interesting. So, and then on Henry's, so you have all the work with the restoration, kind of keeping the habitat at a high level. What about the fishing? You hear about these, you got these large fish. How does that look as far as fishing pressure? Do you find that, that it gets pretty, what could somebody expect if they were going there to fish? Or do you have any advice for somebody that's maybe going to be fishing that?
Yeah, I mean, it varies greatly. Like I mentioned earlier, we fish on just a few year classes of fish. So if you have problems with the year class, you don't have good survival with 1 or 2 year classes, the fishery really tanks and catch rates drop dramatically. The benefit to that is when those numbers do drop, that's when you see your largest fish. So like right now, we're in a period where our numbers aren't the best, but we have very large fish. So if you go to Henry's Lake, you can expect, if you're catching some fish, you may not catch a fish an hour, which is a pretty high catch rate on Henry's Lake, but you may catch a 7-pound hybrid or 8-pound hybrid.
Oh, wow.
So
right.
Up to 14 pounds, larger fish. The largest fish I ever measured on or weighed on Henry's Lake was 14 pounds.
14 pounds. Is that something that was caught by a angler or by you or by somebody out there?
That's a fly angler that caught that. And what we've caught, you see a good number of fish over 10 pounds over the years, hundreds really. And you get, that 12-pound, 13-pound mark, then you see very few. I think over the 15 years I was there, I think I saw 4 fish over 13 pounds. But the state record brook trout came out of Henry's Lake, 7 pounds, 1 ounce. So you'll see brook trout, 4 pounds isn't uncommon.
Right. So you got a chance to get not only some nice, and you're talking, when you say 14 pounds, what species is that?
That would be the hybrid. Usually the largest fish, you'll see, just generally speaking, you'll see cutthroat up to 6 or 7 pounds. Hybrids is up to that 14 pounds would be the exception, but certainly 10 pounds.
Yeah. And what is the hybrid again? Remind us again, what are the species mix?
It's rainbow cutthroat, cutthroat female, rainbow milt.
Okay, rainbow cutty. So that's the big ones, and then you've got also Yellowstone cutthroats, and you have brook trout. So, and then why is it that when there's a kill or less fish, there's these bigger fish? Is that just because there's more of an opportunity to just explain that. Why do you get a chance at the big fish when there's less fish?
Less competition. So you've got the cow in the pasture analogy. You get, there are limited resources out there. So if you have a large number of fish growth is slower, and fewer fish, you're going to feed better, and you're going to see larger fish. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay, nice. Well, this is a good, starting point here. And as you look around, it sounds like when you were working, so you work exclusively at the lake. Are there other lakes in that area that, I know I've heard of a few of them. I guess, what do you think about if somebody's thinking about doing some fishing in that area? Are there other lakes that people could target on top of Henry's?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Hebgen is a great fishery, and of course that's in Montana. But Island Park is down the road, and it can be a pretty good fishery as well, a still water fishery. There are, over in Montana, there's some other smaller lakes, Elk Lake and Hidden Lake, Cliff Lake, Wade Lake. Those are all Montana, but relatively close. They're within a half an hour or so.
Close by. What about Sheridan Lake? Have you heard of that one?
Absolutely, and we fish that all the time. Sheridan's.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, Sheridan's a private lake, and since my retirement, I also do a little guiding. So we.
Okay.
And Sheridan Lake is a popular fishery. It has rainbows in it primarily, but really terrific private fishery. It's limited, I think, to 12 rods per day. The public can fish there by paying a rod fee, or they can hire a guide. It's a great fishery as well.
So on Sheridan, there's a limit, so there can't be more than 12 anglers on their lake at any time.
That's correct.
Gotcha. So, okay. And how does Sheridan size wise compare to Henry's?
Sheridan Lake, and it's kind of like Henry's. It varies over the year depending on fish population. But Sheridan can have their really robust rainbows, thick, deep, up to 20 inches is you'll see fairly common. Over that, not as many, but I think we've got some 22, 23-inch fish, and then over the years, some larger. But yeah, they would be size-wise a step below Henry's Lake.
Right. And is that mainly, why is that? Maybe explain that. How is that different from what's going on at Henry's?
Yeah, well, each system's different. And, based on water temperatures, of course, feed, nutrients, what the feed in the lake. And Henry's just is, I emphasize that Henry's is just an exception to, as far as still waters go. It's one of the best for growth.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not that Sheridan or any of these other ones are kind of weird. It's literally that Henry's is the one that's just this almost maybe an outlier with these giant fish.
Absolutely.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Wow, this is great. And so maybe just take us back to the Henry's Lake Foundation. It sounds like it's been going a while. Do you know the history of how that originally got founded? And maybe even think about that, and then also just take us back a step further beyond that and talk about why is, the dam, why is that there? How did that begin? And I have some guesses, but do you know the whole history there?
Yeah, pretty much most of it. And I can start at the dam. Henry's is a natural lake. It's always been a productive lake and produced, back in the 1800s, Henry's Lake was, fish were harvested there commercially to supply miners in Montana area, Hickview, Montana area, and others. But then in around 1920, there was a dam was installed to increase the capacity of Henry's Lake. And that was installed basically for irrigation purposes. And then years later, and I've kind of forgotten, I want to say the 60s, but the dam was elevated to actually store more water. So it's a natural lake with a dam in place to raise the level to store more water. North Fork Reservoir Company owns that water above natural lake level, so they can, do how they see it. And so the good thing really about that is they do a great, North Fork Reservoir Company does a great job of trying to keep water up in Henry's Lake. Obviously, once you let water out the dam and go down, you can't get it back up to the lake. So it takes, if the lake level is dropped dramatically like it did in 2001, if it's down below 50%, I think we projected that would take about 3 good water years to fill that lake once it went below 50%. And that was the case. But Henry's Lake Foundation was started in the late 70s. The fishery was in the dumpster for the most part. Poor water quality. The fish numbers were down. Fishing was really, really tough. And so a group of folks got together and started the Henry Lake Foundation, and they, to see what they could do to help the fishery. And they really ended up with tributary restoration. The tributaries were in poor shape. There were fish that were, going up the tributaries to spawn, and then the fry and the adults were diverted out by irrigation diversions and flopping out in fields, pastures, things like that. So that's the genesis of the Henry's Lake Foundation, and it really took off running. Initiated contact with landowners. Basically said, hey, if we can fence and protect, the riparian areas and the tributaries, if we can pay for all that and do maintenance work on that, will you allow us to do so? And landowners are very cooperative. They wanted to see good water quality in Henry's Lake as well. Cooperated with the Idaho Fish and Game, and that's been a really an important relationship for over 4 decades.
Yeah, it sounds like from what I've been hearing, it's a pretty cool, pretty unique, well, maybe not unique, but a very healthy relationship with, the landowners, everybody out there, is that everybody understands you need food, right? The old Idaho potatoes, right? That's kind of the joke, but it's true, right? I mean, it's an important part of it. But at the same time, the fishing is also important. Do you find that with recreation, you see this in some areas, where you have one industry that really has an important role, and then that decreases, and then another, maybe other industry becomes bigger, right? Like, say, fishing. Has that changed over the 40 years? Have you seen less demand for water, or do you see now, especially with kind of the aridification or whatever we have going on now, that there's actually more demand and it's getting more challenging?
I think I would say, from my perspective, about the same. There's always been a high demand for water for the reasons you mentioned, but again, they work real well. The North Fork Reservoir Company and Idaho Fish and Game realized the importance of keeping water up high in the system, and so they've done a really, really good job. It's over, every couple of decades we have events like we had in 2000 where we see big drops in water level.
No, it's cool. I see it. Yeah. So basically, there were groups that basically saw the importance of Henry's Lake and just the fishing. So it's all, and that's what you hear, right? So the Henry's Fork is, the Henry's Fork, the South Fork, these famous rivers. And it got me thinking, we had an episode recently, we were talking about the Grand Canyon, the Colorado, like Lake Powell, because they have, because the drought or, that's going on, one of the reservoirs is below. I don't even think it's really being used because of the intakes, right? They're below the levels. And I think something like, it took Lake Powell, 30 years to fill up, right? That's how big it is, and then now it's been going down for many years. And so it's getting lower, but I guess that's a little bit different, and maybe a much smaller lake, it sounds like easier for you to keep that lake full. Is that the case? Like, in any given year, you can pretty much, unless it's a crazy drought, you can keep a lot of water in there.
Yeah. For the most part, that's true. And it's water in Idaho. Most people, I'm sure, know it's a really complicated system, and there's water trade, so they'll trade water from Henry's Lake to another system and keep water up in Henry's Lake. It's a very, very complicated system, and water rights and water issues in Idaho and probably elsewhere in the West are far above my level, but very, right. Very comprehensive.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing to think about, and that is always the water trades, water rights, and groundwater. How much water is out there, all these big questions, but that's good to hear. So it sounds like things are in a pretty stable place. I mean, what was it like for you going from your position in, kind of before you retired to now? Do you, how does that feel where you're at now? It sounds like, so you're president of the foundation?
Vice president. Richard Hodge is a president. And yeah, it's been fairly unique. Henry's Lake Foundation, as I mentioned earlier, in the early 80s, started off with a bang and really was very active. And towards the turn of the century, it became less active. And then we had when I moved up there in 2001, it became active again. The Henry's Lake Foundation installed a very active president and a very active board, and they really took off running and started doing projects again in earnest. And then Richard Hodge took over as president 4 or 5 years ago, and that's about the time I retired. And since then, we've been just even more active. We're as active today as we've ever been, and we're fairly unique with NGOs. We don't have it's all volunteer. We don't have paid staff people.
Oh, wow.
Short of one bookkeeper. So every dollar that's donated to Henry's Lake Foundation goes back to restoration, fishery management, research projects, things like that. We've helped out with research projects as well. So that's the uniqueness of our organization, and we're composed primarily over the years historically fly anglers, but as you probably know, Henry's Lake over the last decade or so has become quite a popular ice angling.
Oh, it has?
Yeah. So
right.
It has. And regulations were changed. We didn't always agree with the regulation changes, but they're in place now. But but that probably all anglers have benefited from the restoration work and the dollars that the Henry's Lake Foundation have put out for these projects. But we would like to see some of the other anglers that join us, and because they've all benefited from the work. There've just been dozens and dozens of projects. Really, you can say, I think without exaggerating, that the fishery today exists in a great part by what the Henry's Lake Foundation has done. We've helped out it back about 15 years ago. The Idaho Fish and Game was considering not stocking brook trout because they can be an invasive species, and really the only way of stocking those would be to sterilize them. So the Henry's Lake Foundation purchased a pressure machine, which they use still today to basically sterilize the hybrids and the brook trout. So the numbers can be controlled. They're not reproducing. They're not overpopulating. And that was paid, that the Henry's Lake Foundation paid for that. We've always been a group that, when cash is needed, we step up. We stepped up this year with almost $30,000 over $30,000 in cash commitments for projects. And that's kind of an annual basis. We've contributed over the years, probably several $100,000.
And does that funding come from like just direct contributions from people that are, members, or where does the bulk of the cash come from?
Yeah, members, donations, and the lifetime. We really push for lifetime membership. That's $500, and with that, we give her we teamed up with the Temple Fork Foundation, and so you get a $300 fly rod with your $500 commitment. So it's a great commitment and helps us out. We turn that money right back into projects, like I mentioned earlier.
This is awesome. So I love this. So, I mean, and $500 for a lifetime membership it's definitely reasonable. That's a great thing. So essentially $500, now you're a part of this, which is great, and also the Temple Fork Foundation. I didn't know about that. So you're talking about the Temple Fork rod. So they have to talk about that foundation, how that works.
Yeah. And Temple Fork's rod, I should have said probably rather than foundation, but yeah, Temple Fork, they give us a great price on rods. So we purchase rods from them, and we have our, the Henry's Lake Foundation, a name emboldened on that rod. And then if you purchase a lifetime membership, we give you a choice of one of those rods.
Wow. I love that. That's a great idea. So you can get so it's a little incentive there to get people in the door, but it also, for $500. And once you get in, what does that look like? What do you see people you probably have all levels, people that just donate money. Do you find people also donate and want to get, kind of on the ground volunteering? Are there opportunities there for people? Yeah,
absolutely. We, they not only, and we have some fairly large contributors year after year that will contribute monies, but our volunteer work is really second to none. We have a great a volunteer coordinator, and she's on the ground. If the Fish and Game or any other entity that's doing good work, the BLM, we've done a lot of work with BLM, the Forest Service. If they need additional hands, we can quickly organize volunteers, get on the ground and help them. We're doing monitoring on Targhee Creek right now for water flow monitoring for a project with Robert Keith that I mentioned earlier. So that's all organized by the Henry's Lake Foundation.
Okay, and monitoring of water flows, is that something where you're taking like stream gauge measurements just to document, kind of make sure the flows are staying up, or what does that look like with the monitoring?
Yeah, just monitoring flow, because our work that we've initiated and we already have a project plan in place on lower Targhee, so restoring the stream on lower Targhee to initiate the floodplain once again, and restore the hyporeal flow, so the flows, groundwater flow, good water quality that contributes to good spawning potential, good water quality throughout the summer and winter, and so that's a very large scale project. And so, yeah, this is just pre-project monitoring.
Today's episode is sponsored by Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton Territory, Idaho's most renowned zone for fly fishing, from the Henry's Fork to the South Fork of the Snake and all the high alpine lakes and streams in between. Yellowstone Teton Territory provides anglers and other outdoor enthusiasts with all the information they need to plan their next big trip. You can visit wetflyswing.com/Teton right now to get the full list of outfitters, lodges, fly shops, and all kinds of inspiration to get you started on your next trip to Eastern Idaho. That's Teton, Teton, wetflyswing.com/Teton. And so talk about let's just focus on tardy real quick. And so the issues or the, kind of things you're trying to deal with there are, what are the big ones? It sounds like riparian, fish passage. What are the big things you're thinking about? Like you need to make sure to keep the river or, Targhee healthy. Is it Targhee Creek or Targhee? It's Targhee Creek, right?
It's Targhee Creek. And Targhee Creek, I might have mentioned earlier, is the largest tributary to Henry's Lake. So restoring water, we've done, Targhee Creek, I believe, has 4 fish streams on that. So Targhee Creek, there are laterals going off from Targhee Creek to irrigate pastures for cattle grazing. And so we've installed and paid for installation of fish screens so that adult and fry fingerlings won't be pushed out to those pastures. It can actually be pushed back to the tributary. That's a big part of it. Maintaining flow. Of course, we're very supportive of irrigation and cattle watering and making sure that those landowners have the amount they need, but we cooperated so that they get the amount of water they need, but yet excess water is still diverted down Targhee Creek so that we have constant flow throughout the late summer months. And restoring the you can picture lower Targhee over decades ago there was cattle grazing. Now there's not cattle grazing any longer. There's actually a conservation easement in place. But over the years, that degradation of the riparian area led to an entrenched stream. So that stream, instead of meandering, is shooting right down to the lake. This project that we're working with Robert Keith on will involve restoring the sinuosity to the stream. And a lot of people think that, when streams flow out of their banks, that's a bad thing, but that's really not a bad thing. You're re-engaging the floodplain and restoring groundwater flow, hyperrete flow, and that's all good. And so that's what we're trying to do, turn that, restoring the wetland areas down there. That's a big focus. Targhee is relatively healthy overall, but this project is one of the more exciting projects that we've been involved with.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great explanation of what you got going there. Talk about, you mentioned the $500 or where people can get involved. So where would we send them right now if somebody wanted to just donate some money and help the everything you have going on?
2 places. You can just search on Google Henry's Lake Foundation or on Facebook, Henry's Fork Foundation. And we do have links there where you can join up and your lifetime membership, or we have an annual membership as well. But that's fairly easy. It's like I say, there's her naming is a little, sometimes people do confuse us with the Henry's Fork Foundation. But
that's right, Henry's Fork. Yeah, it's close. Henry's Fork Foundation, Henry's Lake. But I mean, you're right there. You're all connected. Do you actually work closely with the Henry's Fork Foundation? Are you always talking? Is that something where you're meeting up regularly, or how does that look?
I wouldn't say we meet regularly with them, but we have contact. They've supported us in some of our projects on the lake, and again, they kind of stay downstream of Henry's Lake. They leave Henry's Lake to us, but they have done some research a few years back. They did a research project on Henry's Lake, and we helped. We contributed cash to that and helped complete a grant for that. So we've worked. They supported us when we initiated the Targhee Howard Creek bridge projects. So they're supportive. We work in conjunction with them, but primarily they have their area focus. We have our area focus, and it works in tandem, basically.
Right. Are there other conservation groups or groups similar to what you have going and the Henry's Fork Foundation out there in that area?
Yeah, some land trust organizations, but really, as far as NGOs that are active, there's a new one, Henry's Fork Wildlife Alliance, that's doing work, of course, focused on wildlife, but they do other work, and they're very active as well. And we've teamed up with them. We just completed a project on the south shoreline of Henry's Lake in conjunction with the Bureau of Land Management, where we restored BLM as lead in that. We installed some large woody debris, and then we planted that area as well as the west shoreline of Henry's Lake with willows. And so we contributed volunteers to that and cash, and then the Henry's Fork jumped in and contributed some volunteers as well. Henry's Fork Wildlife Alliance.
The Wildlife Alliance. This is good. Okay, so you got the Wildlife Alliance, Henry's Fork Foundation, Henry's Lake Foundation. When you look at Henry's Lake, if somebody was going to want to know about, whether, like you said, sometimes there's fish kills, could somebody find out about that? Like where would they go to figure out, like, are there a lot of fish in there? Is this a good time to fish? What would be your recommendation there?
Yeah, your best contact. I mean, we have some knowledge of it. You're always welcome to contact us. But the best contact is the Idaho Fishing Game. Yeah, the region, Upper Snake region in Idaho Falls. They have a terrific biologist. He's been there a couple of years now, Nathan Tilston. And Henry's Lake is, there's a lot of work completed on Henry's Lake. It's one of the most aggressive gill net operations every spring to monitor the population trends. So that's done. Nathan does that work, from ice off until, 8 or 10 nights of gill netting, and then they have a good idea of that trend. They have a target they shoot for, so they can tell you if they're above or below the target and size.
Yep. How do you spell Nathan's last name?
Let me see. I might get it wrong. Tilliston, I believe.
Okay, yeah, Tilston. Okay,
yeah.
Good. So there is a good chance, if you want to just find out more, we can dig in there with Nathan. But essentially, it sounds like, in any given year, there's going to be some fish there. Some years, there's going to be even larger fish. But ultimately, if you're coming out there, again, let's take it back to that. You're coming out there fishing. What is your, recommendation? Or who would we talk to find out more information on, where to go, what to do if we wanted to kind of, find some fish, get some action out there?
Yeah, again, the Idaho Fishing Game, primary contact, but we, our entire board is composed of avid anglers that really most of us belong because we love fishing Henry's Lake. Henry's Lake is just
Are you a fly angler too?
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, and it's Henry's is a fairly technical lake. It's really, it can be a challenge and it's fun from that respect. You probably know it's infamous for being a sinking line lake. As far back as Ted Trueblood in the early '60s talked about a lake that with fish rising that you couldn't catch with a dry line, and so it can be a challenging lake, and it's good to know where the fish may be, where the fishing's in lines and of course lines, flies, depth, all that stuff. And so it's, you're welcome to contact us. Again, we have several very avid board members.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, good. We have Phil Roy is one of our main contributors for our Stillwater stuff. He's going to be, I think, we're going to be putting together a trip there next year, and we're going to be talking more about this. And a lot of his techniques, he does a lot of the stuff with like indicators, chironomid fishing. He really focuses on some of the other stuff. But do you find much of that out there that people are doing some of the other types of Stillwater fishing on top of just sinking lines or dry lines?
Yeah, absolutely. And dry lines using indicators, of course, is getting, and indicators have really, over the past decade or so, really grown in popularity. You see a lot of that now. And so, as a matter of fact, one of our board members, Kevin Skinnendor, I think took Phil out a couple of years ago through the Drift Lodge. And I might mention that Drift Lodge there is a fly shop there on the lake that does a good job too. They keep up to date on the fishery and do a really good job of relaying that information to the public. So they're a great contact.
Yeah, Drift Lodge. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And between the brook trout, rainbows, and cutthroat on the lake, is one of those species, do you find a lot of differences in the way they, take the fly, any of that stuff, or are they all kind of similar?
No, they're really, really all different. There's the Fishing Game did a research project about a decade ago or so, and a diet study. And yeah, it was really interesting to see the differences in the diets between the three types of fish. The hybrids and cutthroat were very similar, but brook trout were a little bit different. So yeah, there's certainly some differences. The brook trout, seek out some of the coldest water, so you'll see them move around a little differently than you see the hybrids and the cutthroat. But yeah, there are different techniques and different habitats for all the fish. And
on brook trout, I'm just kind of curious about this. Why, have brook trout there? It seems, there's other species, rainbows. What do you think? What does brook trout provide that, say, Yellowstone, cutthroat, or rainbows can't provide?
Yeah, brook trout are one of probably the most popular fish on the lake, and even though they're a non-native, they fight hard. They're blocky built. Anglers really, really like to get it. It's for the lower 48, certainly, catching a 4-pound brook trout is just almost unheard of. And so you can catch a brook trout of a lifetime at Henry's Lake. And so I think that's some of their popularity. All three types of fish, though, are just, a 20-inch cutthroat is great to catch. And, it's a tremendous fishery.
They all have their own thing. It sounds like brook trout, right? You can go back to the East Coast and go find places with trophy brook trout. But literally that's one of the cool things. You can go out to this place in the West and have a chance of catching a trophy brook trout. That seems pretty awesome.
It does, yes.
And good. Well, as we look at, we're going to take it out of here in a bit here. Any other projects you want to highlight with what you have going out there? You've mentioned a few of them. I think just high level with, like you talked about, the fish passage and screening and riparian. Anything else, coming up, or anything else you want to highlight here?
Yeah, just it's pep in that. So we're always looking to the future. There's the shoreline work is something relatively new. We've done projects on Pintail Point, shoreline restoration. We've worked with Fremont County to do shoreline fencing near Frome Park, and as I mentioned, the Hope Creek area and the South Shore shoreline restoration. But one of the really big things that was just happened was ownership change. Tom Cole was a large landowner on Targhee and Howard Creek, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And we were very concerned. The Henry's Lake Foundation was very concerned about the change in ownership. And Robert Keith, as I mentioned earlier, bought the Targhee and Howard Creek property. That the Howard Creek property was turned over then and sold to the Nature Conservancy, and so that is something big. Although we weren't, I wouldn't say that we initiated. We just supported that project, but protection of the Howard Creek property and enhanced protection, I should say, of the Targhee Creek property is just gigantic in the Henry's Lake ecosystem.
Yeah, right. This is good. Okay, and I wanted to do a quick. We usually take it out of here when we can, doing a little kind of listener shout out segment, and I want to do that really quick as we start to take it out of here. But give me a background on your fly fishing. How did you first get into fly fishing?
I first got into fly fishing several decades ago. I worked at a sporting goods store and had some really good friends that got me involved, and they were avid Henry's Lake fishermen. And so they actually got me involved. I kind of faded out. I did a lot of hunting for quite a few years and didn't do a lot of fishing. But once I moved up to Henry's Lake in 2000, that's where I really became active in fly fishing. And obviously living on the lake, living on the North Shore, 365 days of the year, you you see the benefits of going out there and fly fishing on that lake. So that was my real active involvement from that point till now.
Gotcha. And you still, and like you said, a lot of the board members are fly fishing focused. Where are people also fishing? Are you fishing like the streams heading down to the down below, or is it mainly focused on the still water?
Yeah, I focus primarily on still water. I fish year round. I live up in north central Idaho, so I steelhead and salmon fish and all that. But really in the summer, I primarily focus on Henry's Lake. It's hard to take myself away from that. I do fish Hebgen a little bit, but yeah, Henry's Lake is just almost an addiction, and we'll see anglers that fish every day that the weather will allow them all summer long.
Oh wow!
I know many of them. So it's
the addiction. Is it kind of like it sounds like with steelhead, right? Especially when numbers aren't as large as you expect to be out there without touching a fish. That takes some addiction, right? Is that kind of the way it is at Henry's?
It is, and there's a social aspect to it. Like anglers that you've known for decades and decades, and some of my best friends are I'm sure fishing this morning out there, so yeah, it's you talk about it, you fish, and you go there year after year, and it's one of those things that I always kind of kick myself for living up there that many years and not fishing other waters as often as I should have. But yet, Henry Lake is just one of the best fisheries. And it's just hard to pull yourself away from that.
Perfect. Well, let's do a quick listener shout out, and then we'll take it out of here with a couple of random fire questions. So we have Alan Bergalt sent an email in, and we'll tie this into some of the stuff we're doing. But Alan said, Dave, I listened to your podcast with Justin at Cape Breton today. He says, I have been fishing Cape Breton for many years. I've been fly fishing and tying for over 50 years and have a commercial fly tyer and rod builder, custom net maker. He said, if you want to talk to someone in Cape Breton who knows salmon fishing, you should look up Robert Chiason, the dryflysalmon.com. So, and then at the end, Alan said, basically just let us know where we can go to find this person, because we're in that episode, we were talking about salmon fishing, Atlantic salmon fishing. And first, going to shout out, Alan said, keep up the great podcast. So thanks, Alan, for checking in by email. But turning back to you, Damon, what is, again, somebody's coming to Henry's, like, who would be that person, you would, or where would you send somebody if they wanted to kind of get that guide, get the information to maybe get on Henry's Lake and have some success? Any recommendation there?
Yeah, and I'm a little hesitant because I am a licensed guide in the lake, and I.
Oh, right. Yeah, maybe you're the person we should be. Is that? Well, let's not put you on the spot. We don't have to put you on the spot here, but
yeah. I guess I'd rather not to. Again, as far as a retail outlet, that Drift Lodge is I think the best. But Idaho Fishing Game and there are numerous guides on the lake and
yeah. And how do you do it? So talk about your guiding. Where are you? How does that look? Is that something you're just doing on the side, or where are you guiding? Is it just the lake?
So yeah, we guide on. We work for Eagle Ridge Ranch, has a license on Henry's Lake, and so we work for them on Henry's Lake. We also have a small group, a small company where we guide on Sheridan Lake. So again, working under Eagle Ridge, and we guide on those two bodies of water, and there are about 5 of us that are involved with that, and it gives us a great opportunity to, one thing I really enjoyed working at Henry's Lake was not only the fishery, but the anglers and contact with the anglers, and really guiding allows me to keep in contact with those anglers and new anglers. And there's nothing like, I don't know how many times over my, over the last 23 years there that I've been involved at Henry's Lake, I don't know how many times that I was either out monitoring or had somebody out and said, hey, I just caught the largest trout I've ever caught in my life. And that's, as anyone that fishes Henry's a lot knows, that's fairly frequent, And so that's a unique aspect of being out there and being involved with people. So,
yeah. How does that work with the guiding? When I know the Idaho has some regulations on that with the guiding on Henry's Lake. Is it open to whoever wants to guide, or is it restricted to certain shops or guides can fish the lake? How does that look?
It's restricted to there's outfitter license on the lake. Eagle Ridge Ranch holds one, and that's who we work for. I think there's a total, I believe 7 or 8 licenses, and that's limited. There's no more. There can be a set number of boats on the lake at one time. Only 2 for each license. So yeah, and you have to be a licensed guide. So you're licensed under that outfitter, and no one can look quite a bit different than Montana.
Yeah. So if we wanted to, for example, if Phil was coming in, we would probably want to be working with, we'd have to work with an outfitter out there, or maybe he wouldn't even be guiding, right? He would be just teaching, or maybe just working with the shop or whoever has that license. That would probably be the way that would go down.
Yeah. Not being an expert, but I mean, yeah, if you're taking somebody out and you're not doing it for monetary purposes, I mean, obviously you can help people or whatever. But yeah, I think the Drift Lodge, I think they've booked Phil in the past. They have licensed guides. So
right, they booked Phil.
Yeah,
perfect. All right, and I want to quickly on Sheridan. So back to Sheridan. So if somebody was getting ready to fish Sheridan, what would be your advice to them? Is that lake a little bit easier to catch fish than Henry's, or what do you? How does somebody get prepared for that?
Yeah, Sheridan is an easier lake to catch numbers of fish. And it's pretty consistent throughout the year. June, July, there's a dry fly fishery that we normally see in August. Fish move up towards the mouth of Sheridan Creek, and so that's real exciting. The September fishery can be good. So yeah, really, I would say more consistency in Sheridan Lake. A little smaller fish, but really hot fish and good numbers. And it's the nicety again is it's limited to those 12 rods.
Right.
So that's
if it wasn't limited to 12 rods, it might be a different situation with the fishing there.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Anything else you want to give a heads up? I think I was going to just take us out of here and, a couple of my random questions. But before we get there, just are we good covering all the topics? It feels like if people want to dig deeper, they can head out to henryslakefoundation.com.
Yeah. I just emphasize that. And again, even if you're not a fly angler or you've had, I think the best use of your money to help protect Henry's Lake and maintain the great fishery we have is to belong to the Henry Lake Foundation, and rest assured that all your dollars go toward good projects and not towards a payroll.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. Well, let's do our quick little rapid fire round. We'll take it out here, Damon. So I always love the podcast or music question. Have you listened to any podcasts, or do you listen to more podcast music? What's it look like when you're on a road trip?
Yeah, I've got it over the past couple of years. I haven't listened to yours yet. I will now, but I listen to a lot of hunting podcasts.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, I'm.
What's one? What would be a hunting podcast you listen to, or what's in your feed right now?
Elk Talk is a good one. Ratty Newberg and Bozeman and Corey Jacobson are a great one. But that's one I listen to. Almost every one of those.
Good. And what do you like? It sounds like you're obviously, information is key. What do you love about the podcast? What, like listening to those podcasts? What is it? Why not listen to music? Do you just love the tips and tricks, or what do you get out of a podcast? Yeah,
the tips and I guess I like the realness of it, and I like the technical aspects great and good, but I do like the realness of it, and when you get people that are talking about it's great to hear someone, for instance, in a fishing podcast talk about maybe how tough fishing was on Henry's Lake last week, and how it's always good. It's good to know that people are real and they're recording, good stuff like that. So
that's a great point. I mean, today, do you feel like we've done it justice? Like we haven't, as far as expectations, we've painted a picture that people can understand what to expect. Yeah,
I think this is the first one I've been interviewed a lot, but never, I don't think, done a podcast. But yeah, I think you've done a terrific job. I think you really covered. I can't think of anything.
That's great. All right, David. Well, we'll send everybody out, like we said, henryslakefoundation.com. And then hopefully we can get some more funding coming in there. And we're going to be heading out next year. And we don't have all the details yet, but I'm excited because I can't wait to drive out there and cross, some of these creeks that you've talked about today and really maybe even see some of those projects. Could somebody actually go drive? Is there public areas where they can drive up and actually see one of these projects anywhere there?
Yeah, there's a number of them, but probably the best access right now of the recent project would be what's called the cliff area, the south shore of Henry Lake by Hope Creek. And that's right. There's a Red Rock RV park, and you access it via that. You go down to what's called the cliff area and look at that great project that the BLM spearheaded, and that installation of that LWD, large woody debris, and it's going to make such a difference, and it's very visible.
Very visible. And give us one more before we get out of here. If we're coming there next year and we're getting there late or getting there for dinner time, where's a place we should go? Do you have a restaurant or some food you would recommend anywhere in that area?
Yeah, there are a number.
Is there a lot?
Yeah, Connie's. I mean, as far as our side of the divide, Connie's is great. There's Pond's Lodge has great pizza, and there are a number of. Probably missing one or two of them in there, but that's normally where we headed. Oh, yeah, great Mexican restaurant on the river.
Oh, what's that called?
No, I've lost the name. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Yeah. Downstream, that's on the Henry's Fork?
Yeah, that's on at Max Inn. Yeah, that's a
Max Inn.
Yeah, right by Max Inn on the river. Great Mexican restaurant. Yeah.
Max Inn. Okay, great. All right, Damon. Well, I think we'll leave it there, and definitely, I think we'll probably also be in touch with you heading, forward because we've got some trips coming up here. But yeah, I appreciate all your, everything today and all the work you've done over the years for, obviously protecting and, all the conservation work you've done has been amazing. So thanks for sharing that today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on Traveled, part of the Wet Fly Swing podcast and Swing Outdoors. This podcast was supported by Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory. You can support this podcast in Eastern Idaho by heading over to wetflyswing.com/Teton right now, and you can let any of the brands know that you found them through this podcast and click in there and check out all the great brands. We've had a number of them on this podcast, and we would love you to find out all the good stuff they have going. You can also check in with me anytime, Dave at wetflyswing.com, if you have any questions or feedback or have an idea of where we should be traveling to next. And one big reminder before we get out of here, the Stillwater School is going right now. If you go to wetflyswing.com/Stillwater School, you can find out if we have any slots available for the big trip out to this part of Eastern Idaho. Phil Roy is going to be our guru. He's going to be breaking out the Stillwater magic. And if you wanted to up your game this year, this is your best chance right now. You can check in there or send me an email. Like I said, Dave at wetflyswing.com. And as we roll out of here, I just want to thank you for taking the time today to check out the Traveled podcast. And I appreciate you for your support and all the listens here. And I hope you have a chance to experience that road less traveled.